dissertation. Okay, so once again I started afresh because today's lesson will be on this topic. Okay, so can you see this research onion of Saunders, the presentation on the screen? Can all of you see?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Now, this onion framework, you can see, takes the shape of an onion where we go on explaining our method in the process as if we peel off the layers of an onion. So, in the very outer layer, you can see that philosophies are discussed, right? In the next layer, you can see we have approaches, then you can see we have strategies, then comes choices, and then time horizons, and then techniques. Okay. Now, first of all, when you look at the research, say you have to first of all find, you with your knowledge, you know that a research can be an inductive research or a deductive research, right? You tell me now, inductive research or deductive research becomes more qualitative with your knowledge. Can you tell me? Which one is sorry? Deductive research is?
Deductive is quantitative.
Very good, very good. Inductive is more qualitative. Okay. So now, what makes us think that this particular research is quantitative, this particular research is qualitative? You know, what makes us think like that? We have all some kind of a philosophy in the back of our minds, so that we tend to interpret certain situations with a philosophy back in our minds. So we are trying to see what kind of philosophy leads us to do a research in a quantitative manner or a qualitative manner. Okay. So you can see in the outer layer of the research onion, we find the philosophies. So let's first of all see what is a philosophy. You can say philosophy is an overarching term relating to the development of knowledge and nature of the knowledge. So a philosophy that we have leads us to look at a problem in a particular way and look at searching knowledge in a particular way, right? So how we develop a philosophy differs based on these 3 points. It's ontology, epistemology, and axiology. When you say ontology, you're looking at the assumptions about the nature of reality. So let me explain it through an example in a simple way. Now let's assume you're having 3 companies called A, B, C. All these 3 companies have the same common problem where they are all faced with a problem related to employee motivation. So they all want to see what should be there for employees to be motivated. Okay. Can you tell me some of the theories in your viewpoint would explain this? Can you?
Maslow hierarchy.
Very good, very good, very good. So we have Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You can see the motivation theories I have here. There are content theories, there are process theories. So you have the Maslow's, then you have the Herzberg's, and so on and so forth. You have quite a number of theories. So if you're going to bring in these theories and then find what should be there for people to be motivated, right? Then you're of course heavily depending on the theories to interpret your problem. Let's say with the help of the theories, you identify that people should be given rewards, right? And people should be provided with career advancement opportunities and also given good working conditions so that if all these are there, these people will be motivated. Now, I found these things using the theory, okay, and the available literature. If I look at the problem this way, you see, it did not matter to me whether the company is A, B, or C. It did not matter to me whether the workers faced with this problem are managerial workers or non-managerial workers. It did not matter to me what kind of industry each of these companies are based in. So, in the back of the mind, I have looked at the research problem in a manner where I assume that whatever the company, whatever the industry, whatever the category of employees, what motivates them is a universally accepted reality. Okay. So, with respect to all the companies, what motivates people are these things. So, I tend to believe like that when I develop my conceptual framework in this way. So, here, I believe that, as I said earlier, the reality or what actually makes people motivated does not depend on the company, or in other words, it's external to the company. It's not internal, it's external. So, I believe that there is external reality. Okay. So now reality, if you carefully look at, you find it can be external or else it can be internal. So if I believe that my reality is external, then I have an ontology, right? That is my assumption about reality, right? Is objective. It does not depend on the context. If I believe that, no, it cannot be like this, right? How can everybody be motivated using the same measures, based on the same measures? Well, if in one company you find workers are say non-managerial workers, the other company you find workers are senior management. So you find, no, you can't have the same set of factors like this. You have to look at within the company what particularly is related to that company, what particularly is related to that segment of employees. No, I can't completely depend on theories. It actually differs on the context. If you think like that, you are having an external viewpoint, sorry, the internal viewpoint. So you have an internal reality, right? So your reality, your belief about reality is subjective, right? So you can have a belief about the reality which is a subjective one, or else you can have an objective one where you think whatever the company, what motivates people is one and the same. Okay. So now you can see, based on your reality, you tend to develop your philosophy as well. Coming back here, the second point that makes us develop our own philosophy is epistemology. When you see what epistemology is, you find that's where you look at, say, how we can find knowledge about the related problem. How can I go about searching for the knowledge, and where is the knowledge? Okay. Now, once again, looking at the same problem, if I think the knowledge about motivation lies in theories, or the knowledge about the problem in hand lies in the literature, or I can find knowledge by reading literature, then I should read more and more and then find knowledge through that. But if I think, no, I can't depend on that alone. I think my problem is so very unique and I should make detailed discussions with people who are faced with the problem to get to know what the problem is. So therefore, my knowledge I can only acquire with the experiences people have had and people who are living in this context and the experience they have is the source of my knowledge. Now I have to think about how to get that knowledge. So reading literature is not going to help me much. In fact, how to get that knowledge would be to, let's say, interview those people or to closely observe those people, or sometimes some researchers go and live with certain communities to experience how they live. So those are various other ways of acquiring knowledge. The third one is axiology. This is where you find, say, your own value system also drives you to have your own philosophy. So when you say value system, as a researcher, I might think that, say, I would like to collect data by closely associating the problem, say people who are faced with the problem and getting to know the problem in depth. That's the way that I want to collect data. On the other hand, I might think, okay, why should I bother so much? I can employ a third party and I just have to distribute questionnaires and collect it. I can give the data to another person to analyze it for me. That's enough. I don't have to waste my time. Okay. So two different ways of looking at the problem. That also matters in developing our own philosophy. So now, before stepping on to our philosophy, you can see what kind of a way that we can have when we want to present our philosophies. Because if the philosophies are there in the outer layer of the onion, where is our ontology, epistemology? You can see the ontology, epistemology, axiology, if you really want to, can place outside the onion, outside the outer layer of the onion, because based on these three, you will land on any one of the philosophies. Is that clear to all of you? Is that clear to all of you? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm continuing, right? I assume you have understood. So now, if you look at the philosophies here we have, you can see in the diagram I have, you find 4 different philosophies: positivism, realism, interpretivism, and pragmatism. What do you mean by positivism philosophy? You find a person who holds positivism philosophy would look at like this. Okay. Positivism can be defined as research approaches that employ empirical methods, make extensive use of quantitative analysis. So let's say if I bring in the existing theories to explain what makes people say loyal to a certain say supermarket, right? And I find the variables. I just distribute the questionnaires to collect my data and then analyze using statistics. Well, then you find that my approach is very, very structured. Okay. And I have to apply statistics because my say number of questionnaires is quite large, so I have to apply statistics to analyze this condition. So therefore we find that positivism is a philosophy where the researcher thinks that everything is explained with a universally accepted set of rules. So therefore, you can bring in theories to explain your problem. And as a result, when you test your theory in the context, of course, you need large numbers. And then you bring in statistics, and then you bring in data collection instruments like questionnaires to analyze, to collect your data. So a positivism philosopher would, go along this pathway. Now, if you look at the other end of positivism, actually, it's connected to the other end like this, which is interpretivism. An interpretivism philosopher, right, would look at a problem where I like to collect data with respect to the perceptions held by people with respect to a certain, say, situation. So I have to interview people, talk to them, and collect data so that my data, obviously, it's difficult for me to talk to 150, 200 people. So it would be a group of people, a smaller group of people, say, with whom I have to very closely discuss this problem to get an in-depth understanding of the situation. So obviously that kind of a person thinks of having a more qualitative approach to the research. If you look at realism philosophy, that is where, if you read it, you'll find that a realism philosopher does not limit the data collected through interviews, but also conducts, say, observations, for example, okay? And sometimes such a researcher may even think of taking part in or say experiencing the situation as well, okay? So you have heard that there are certain social scientists who say study the way people live. They also live with those people to experience the kind of living those people have. So realism is connected to that kind of a way of looking at a problem. So it can be say talking to people, or it can be observing, or else it can be even experiencing, right? So that's how we look at the say what is realism is. Whereas pragmatism is where the researcher thinks that no, I don't have to have an ideology. I mean, I don't have to believe that I'm going to be purely qualitative, or I'm going to be purely quantitative, or I'm going to be completely dependent on theories, or I'm going to completely throw away theories. No. Such a philosopher looks at the problem in a more practical way and tries to solve the problem or come up with a solution to the problem in the most practical manner, even by combining the quantitative qualitative approaches, or in other words, adopting a mixed method approach. Okay, so this is how you find the philosophy can be explained. Okay, so right now you would understand that realism is unlikely to be a philosophy among you all when you conduct your research, because that's something like where you have to experience something, to observe something. in more detail. So within the time allocated to you, it's very unlikely that it could be your choice. Now, the others, positivism, interpretivism, of course, can be your choices, particularly if you're having quantitative and qualitative research. And pragmatism is where you combine both sides because you think that relying on either quantitative or qualitative alone would not be the best way to approach the problem. Now, the next layer is inductive and deductive types of research. You know what is deductive. We start from theory and then we develop the hypothesis and collect the data to test the hypothesis, whereas inductive research is where we initially make the observations and then the patterns developed, and then of course we develop tentative hypothesis and finally come up with the framework that best fits into the situation or the context. So can you tell me whether positivism is connected with deductive or inductive? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is positivism connected with inductive or deductive approach?
Deductive.
Very good. You come from positivism to deductive because positivism looks into addressing the problem in a more structured manner. So obviously that lets you think about coming up with the existing knowledge or literature or theories and models and then testing them in the context. What do you think about interpretivism philosophy? Where does it go? It connects with the inductive, right? So these relationships you have to keep in mind. If you're a pragmatist, then you may find that you try to combine the two, but you may have sort of a harder footing on one of the two sides. So sometimes I can do a research where I start off with theories and have the hypothesis, but later on I just follow up on the findings by conducting interviews. Now what happens? I'm following up on the findings based on the interviews. So there, I'm combining the two, but of course I have a greater weight towards the quantitative side. So it is all right to say that I have followed a deductive approach because I have heavily dependent on it. The other side also can be, but in your cases, it's mostly the deductive that say takes the greater weight, even if you have a combination or a mix. Now, if you carefully see the next layer, you can see there are 7 different research strategies. Okay, on the very top, you find experimentation. So, I'll explain what it is. If you look at experimental research, a good example is where, if you look at this test, you find there is a doctor who conducts this test, and you find that there are 2 different groups participating in the study. One group is given the control pills, the other group is given the test pills. Let's say you have developed this pill, say to cure a certain disease. So if you really want to see how effective this pill is, you have to take your patients into two groups. But you have to make sure that in both groups, the patients have the same demographics, or in other words, all other variables should be not different across the two groups. So let's say you can't have in one group more males and the other group more females. No. If you have 50-50 in the control group, have the same way in the experimental group as well. So if you have the age brackets in such a way that there are 40% of respondents between the age 30 to 40, then another say 30% from 50 to say 40 to 50, and over 50 is the other 30%, then you should have the same split in both the groups. Okay. Now, you make these respondents blind. What do you mean by blind? You don't tell them that they are consuming either the control pill or the test pill. In the control pill, there is no medicine. Only in the outer appearance, you can see it looks like a capsule, but in the test pill, the medicine is there. So we see that they are being colored with blue and pink, but no one knows whether blue is the test pill or the control pill, or whether the pink one is so. So that's why we say that they are blind. When you look at this experiment, you see, why did we make them blind? So that they can't say have, even through their say emotional aspects, any influence on the outcome or the results. Okay, in this you can see even the doctor is blind. Only the administrator knows whether the blue one carries the control pill or not. So here we have made a lot of controls here, right? We had to make sure the same gender picture, the same age split, the same demographic factors are there among the two groups or across or between two groups. Why? So that if there is any difference in results between the two groups, it is purely due to the drug and nothing else. So here we try to prove beyond doubt, okay? We try to prove beyond doubt whether there is an effectiveness in the drug or not. This is what you mean by experimental research. So the main characteristic, as you can see, is that you have a lot of control here. So coming back to onion, with respect to the kind of research we do, this is unlikely for us to choose. Okay. What do you mean by survey? That's where you find your respondent base is very large, and you find the best way to access them is by distributing questionnaires. So you develop the questionnaires and distribute them to this large sample, maybe more than 300, 400, and then you have to apply statistics and various other methods to analyze the data. The third one is case study research. This is where you find that your research relates to a chosen company or to a chosen group of companies or entities, let's say. And you try to study a problem faced commonly by the selected group of companies or by the chosen company in more depth. Okay, so you try to sometimes collect their internal records, conduct interviews, and then conduct a survey, maybe, right? So all together helps you to get an overall understanding which is of more depth. However, in case studies, if you conduct a case study of one company, we say it's a single case. If it is of more companies, we say it's a multiple case. That's one categorization of case studies. Again, if you choose one company and look at that company across multiple directions, it's called a multiple, or it's called a holistic case study. But if you choose only one aspect, it is called an embedded case study. For example, if you have chosen a company where you find that company has faced a bankruptcy, so you would like to see why did they bankrupt. So you look at their the company in multiple directions. For example, you look at how they have managed finance, you look at how they have managed human resources, you look at how they have managed their supply chain, right? Marketing and so on. You look at multiple ways to get a complete 360-degree viewpoint. So that's what I mean by a holistic case study. When I say embedded case study, you look at one thing. For example, you look at what affects employee turnover. You look at what affects the employees' productivity, right? Just one thing. But if you look at embedded case studies, you can even conduct them across a group of companies. Say, for example, if you choose 10 companies, in that 10 companies, you try to see a common problem for all 10 and try to find a solution to it. So usually we find the single case studies can be either embedded or even holistic. But when you have multiple case studies with a bunch of companies, and every company, if you're trying to have a holistic viewpoint, that's going to be a bit difficult study. Okay, so you find that case study approach is also a good idea, but of course you find a qualitative research element hidden inside case study, sometimes combination with a quantitative element as well. The rest of the research strategies I will explain in short, because we find that they are unlikely to be our choices. For example, what do you mean by action research? You find that you take an action initially and then see how your respondents behave according to the taken action and take your next action. So I mean, your data collection you find happens at multiple points of time. You initially implement your action, then you see what's going on, then you again collect data, then you again take your next action. So let's say as a teacher, if I practice one technique to teach, then I get the response from the students and see how I should change it. Then again, change it, implement it, get the response of the students, and then again, okay, I think I can further refine it, again implement, get the responses. That's what I mean by action research. Once again, it's not going to be your choice. The next one, you see, you find another strategy which is called grounded theory. Here again, you find a lot of qualitative data collection is there, because you look forward to develop a theory when you're at the starting point, your knowledge about the situation is say not much. So here again, the data collection can be over a long period of time sometimes. So again, not your choice. Ethnographic research is where you find mostly applicable in social sciences. Say, for example, now you may have heard that we had a great social scientist who was a university lecturer also, and he wanted to study how the beggars in our country live. So, do you know how he collected the data? Have you heard? Is there anybody on the other side?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes, I asked you a question. There was this researcher who collected data with respect to his research. He wanted to study the life of beggars. Do you know how he collected his data?
Maybe he go into the beggar society as a beggar.
Very good, very good. So he disguised himself as a beggar and he lived as a beggar, because that's the way that you can experience and then realize what kind of life a beggar would have. So, you know, this kind of research sometimes need this personal experience of the researcher, so that the true picture can be brought about. So, however, it is very unlikely to be your choice. Then again, in the research onion, you have the last strategy here as archival research, if you can see. In archival research, you find you're using the secondary data or data available with a different source to conduct your research. However, I mean, a lot of people who are doing, for example, say stock market research sometimes use company annual reports. Some people also think about, say, collecting data from various other bodies like central bank or census and statistics department and work out your problem. This is an example of that kind of a problem where the student wanted to analyze this gender-wise wage gap in Sri Lanka. And of course, when she came to me, her proposal was approved, not in a university, in a different one. So what happened was, now she was planning to get the data from the census and statistics department, but there was a delay, and because of course the approvals and everything takes a bit of time. But the data did not support her to perform this analysis. For example, the data showed things like this, which were very interesting to find. You can see here how the gap of wages vary based on the education level. Say, for example, here you can see when people reach the post-secondary education level, the wage gap is the highest there. Okay, so it actually brought about like this quite a number of interesting findings. However, be careful when you're planning to do a research with secondary data. Maybe sometimes the data does not clearly support your analysis, or maybe the data comes in a different format than you expect, right? So unless you have a look at the data, unless you know what exactly the format of the data is, it's not a wise idea to initially plan in getting data from a different source to do your research. Anyway, this is what you mean by archival research, because your data is not something that you have collected. You have actually got it from somewhere else, right? So now I have explained the different research strategies that you find here. The next layer you find there is the research choices as monomethod, mixed method, multi-method. When you say monomethod, you look at choosing only one method. Let it be collecting data using say questionnaire or interviews. If you say questionnaire, it's going to be monomethod quantitative, because it's quantitative and you're using only one instrument. If it is interviews, it will be monomethod qualitative. If you use mixed methods, you have both quantitative, qualitative, say data mixed in the same research. Whereas multi-method means, say you find that your data, say comes from different instruments, but you find that, say the quantitative data, for example, comes from a survey and also from the secondary data sources. Say qualitative data comes from interviews and also observation. So, I mean, both are qualitative or both are quantitative. So we will say multi-method quantitative or multi-method qualitative for this kind of research. Now, we have just one last before the core of the onion, which is the time horizon. You can say cross-sectional or longitudinal. When you say cross-sectional, you collect your data only once. When you say longitudinal, you collect your data at multiple points of time. Say, for example, when you want to collect data using a questionnaire, you distribute it once, collect data, finish. You're not going to back again collect data from the same set of respondents. Let's say, on the other hand, you want to find what actually has been the cause behind, say, those people who suffer from those chronic kidney disease in a northern and say the regions where we find the northeast, for example. So this kind of research is very difficult for us to even think of, say, collecting data once. So we may have to go there, we may have to see, okay, how do they get their, say, food, water, sanitary facilities, and what kind of living they have, how they earn, what kind of food they eat. So we have to collect data over a long period of time. So that's not a cross-sectional research, it's a longitudinal research. So if you know all this only, then you can say, okay, I'm going to collect my data using a questionnaire, or I'm going to collect data using interviews, like that. So you have to explain this part very carefully. Now, I will stop here for a while and ask you a few questions. Okay. Can you see this blue color screen?
Yes.
Okay. What is the philosophy? What is the philosophy for this research? If I explain it a bit more detail, it's looking into the impact of celebrity endorsement on purchasing behavior with respect to the beverages. So, who are the celebrities to begin with? Right, this is the topic. You find here Angelo Matthews endorsing Milo, Chaturika, Fitness to Malt. This was a bit longer, like say somewhere 2013-14. Thereafter, we found Roshan. Okay, and thereafter, right, we have some more examples, like say here, you can find Coca-Cola with the Bhatia and Sansush, then Pepsi with Malinga, and Viva with Sangakkara. You find some other foreign celebrities also like this, endorsing various beverages. Okay, now let's come back to the problem. We find that these guys are there endorsing various beverages. What we want to see is, has that actually affected the sales of those products? Do people actually tend to buy a product just because a celebrity is there endorsing that product? That is what we want to look at. Actually speaking, there are quite a lot of theories, right? 3 or 4 theories actually talking about the characteristics a celebrity should have. So based on that, this conceptual framework has been developed. So the theories have helped us to identify these characteristics like the attractiveness, trustworthiness, expertise, and popularity. And we want to see in the beverage industry, people, when the people purchase and their perception towards a celebrity in terms of these has actually made an impact on the purchasing behavior. Okay, now I have clearly explained the problem and I want you to tell me how you draw your path along the onion. What's your philosophy? What's your philosophy?
Interpretation.
Why is it interpretation?
Because you're using different.
Okay, how big is your population?
Vast population.
Right. So, how are you going to collect data? Can you conduct interviews? Vast population means large sample. With a large sample like 300-400 people, can you conduct interviews? No, it's difficult.
Yeah.
Okay, and you drew your conceptual framework by looking at the general characteristics a celebrity should have, and you're just testing it in this market. So you're testing an existing theory and you're having a very structured approach to very good. So you realize your research follows a positivism philosophy. Is it inductive or deductive?
Deductive.
Very good. It's deductive. What is your research strategy?
Questionnaire.
Your data collection instrument is questionnaire and your strategy is a survey. You're collecting, you said you're using questionnaires and you're obviously having a quantitative research. So your choice would be mono method quantitative. And you're not going to collect data more than once. It's going to be a one-shot study. So it's going to be a cross-sectional study. Is that very, very clear to all of you?
Can we do another example?
Sorry?
Can we do another example?
I have 25 examples because I want your understanding to be that much clear. Right. So, okay. This one. I'll give you a briefing. This student wanted to find whether there is applicant faking behavior with respect to recruitment. Now, in companies, when they recruit people, you find that, sometimes people can say that they possess certain skills, but when they actually join work, you don't find that they are so smart as they said. You find that you have not selected the most suitable applicant, right? Because the applicant has been faking, right? Now think very carefully, who should be your respondents? Is there a large population? How are you going to collect data? Or is it something like a very unique thing that you're going to do? and give me your ideas. Okay, so this research wanted to look at whether the mechanisms these companies have adopted uh, to prevent and detect the faking behavior actually has helped them to identify honest people or the most suitable candidates for the jobs they had. Okay, right, we are back with onion. Okay, where are we? Can you guess who will be the respondents?
The recruitment manager.
Very good. Excellent. I like that answer. So if you choose, I mean, large companies, you can't obviously find 100 recruitment managers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Only just a handful of, say, recruitment managers. Again, the problem does not seem to be something that is common across different cultures, different regions, because what is being practiced in the European countries or Western countries, perhaps we can't do because the way that we address people is different. Okay, right? Although we started off with certain mechanisms, actually, when we did the research, it was found that all these things actually are not applied in our country, say, as they are being applied in other countries, or some mechanisms we found are applied in a different way because we had different concerns like the culture. Say, for example, there was one, uh, prevention mechanism like warning instructions. So the way warning instructions are given in some cultures were very strong, right? The wordings were very, not so mild. But in our cases, we found that the company informed the candidates in a very mild way, in a very soft way, not as they did in other countries. Common a good example is in the news. You would have seen how in India they hit the people with batons. Perhaps we can't practice it as it is in Sri Lanka. What do you think?
Yeah, we cannot.
Right. So things are such. So it is therefore going along interpretivism philosophy, because we have to interview to get an in-depth understanding those recruitment managers. So it will be inductive, right?
Yeah.
And then we have a case study, right, with multiple cases that we have chosen, and it's going to be mono-method qualitative, and of course, mono-method qualitative and a cross-sectional study. So this is the way we can look at how to figure out our pathway ahead. So I'll continue with my examples, right? As I said, I have a lot of examples. So when you get sick of the examples, you'll have to tell me to stop.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
You'll have to tell me enough. Right. What do you think of this?
That's affecting the customer networks mobile service providers.
Yeah.
Factors affecting the This is large sample.
Very good. Right. So you're having a quantitative type of a research, and in my previous lectures also I explained how you pick these variables, and of course you look at the context and also you look at the theories related to customer loyalty and choose these variables. So therefore you find it's going along a deductive pathway.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Right. So you have what kind of philosophy?
Positivism.
Very good. Positivism, deductive, survey, monomethod process. Clear, everybody? Now, I want to ask you one more thing. If you are having a positivism philosophy, are you having an objective ontology or a subjective ontology?
Objective.
Very good. Right? So that's what drives us to come along this pathway, positivism to deductive to survey and likewise. Right, now let's move on to another example. So as I said, I'm going on and you will have to tell me enough is enough. Okay. Right. So what do you think of this? This student wanted to see, say, he's looking at the sustainability of the boutique hotels, but here he took the boutique hotels which are like the villa type, not the hotels that are managed by the large hotel chains.
Okay.
The reason is he found that sometimes these small hotels find difficult to say continue, either because they lack profitability or their environmental concerns are not so high, and on the other side he looked at various other factors that affect their sustainability, like the service quality, the product quality, the marketing, distribution channels, and destination. So actually the problem was triggered when you look at the customer reviews, the customer comments, or say with respect to this kind of places, sometimes the customers give really bad comments. There are very good ones as well as bad ones. So looking at all that, he took up these few hotels, villa type ones, the small ones, along the southern coast and conducted this research. And you have to be extremely careful here because, if you think that you're going to collect data by giving a questionnaire to the guests, then you're on the wrong track. Why?
Because it's difficult to get data in that way.
Very good. Because the guest, let's say you and I, we go and stay for a couple of nights. How can we know about sustainability of the hotel that we stay?
Yeah.
Obviously not. So we have to look at the viewpoints of the
Management.
Absolutely, right? The owners, management, and so on. So therefore, it's going to be inductive. So it's going to be interpretivism, inductive, then case study, and right. Then what about this? Yeah. You remember I showed you these slides in one of my previous lectures. If you remember, say, I think, I'll show you. I showed you these pictures.
Yeah.
Right. So we want to see whether those techniques that they adopt actually give them the expected benefits. Okay. So who makes the purchase now?
Customers.
Very good. So who will be your respondents therefore?
Customers.
Very good. Now I have given you the hint. Okay. Where are we heading?
Go positivism.
Very good. So you go from positivism to deductive to survey to mono method to cross section. Clear?
Yeah.
Right. Good. So if I come to this, what do you say? Actually speaking, this student contacted a large number of SMEs, okay, about 100 odd SMEs, and asked them to what extent they experience these independent variables and to what extent they adopted ICT, for example, let's say in terms of communication, in terms of marketing, in terms of processing, and in terms of, say, doing day-to-day activities, to what extent they adopted ICT. So it was conducted as a quantitative research. Okay. What do you think of this?
It is inductive.
Very good, inductive. Why? Because we don't have hundreds of family-owned businesses to ask this, and the problem looks quite unique. And the way they approach, the way things happen in Sri Lanka, we really don't know. So it will be inductive, and then case study, and coming on to a mono method qualitative research. This one. One can even say that, he collected data from various SMEs. So you may suggest that it can be either quantitative, it can be qualitative, it can be a mix.
Mix. Exactly.
Right? So it's your own argument. If you say that the way these SMEs face the problem in Putlam is so very unique, so you would like to see how they figure out their ways of financing, and why they don't much believe in the formal sources. It's altogether a unique problem to them, and you would like to study it in more detail. By all means, it can be approached as a qualitative research. If you think, okay, with the prior research, these factors are found to be common within this kind of, enterprises or people, then you can say that you can collect data using questionnaire and also with the assumption that there are say adequate number of SMEs in this place to conduct this research. Then you can also say, although I have collected data quantitatively, I want to give it a qualitative flavor. So therefore, I want to mix the two sides. Then what happens? You're having a mixed method research. Okay. So here another one. Can you give me the?
This is positivism.
Sorry.
Positivism.
Yes, positivism deductive. However, if you suggest it this way, you collect data quantitatively and analyze them, say, with the help of statistics. And you would like to also get a qualitative input by interviewing the management. Then what happens?
A pragmatism.
Very good. So you step into a pragmatism viewpoint. However, still your approach is more deductive because you have a very strong footing on the deductive side. Clear?
Yeah.
Yes.
In positivism.
Yeah. Because you have a relatively large employee base, and you ask these employees, okay, within your workplace, do you find that you're having say a proper recognition and say proper goals and coaching development? To what extent do you have? And then on the other side, to what extent are you engaged in the jobs? This one. Anti-money laundering. AML is anti-money laundering.
This one's
Sorry?
inductive.
Inductive, very clearly inductive, because it's something that you have to, talk to these people in more detail. We never know what is going on in Sri Lanka, and we don't know to what extent the foreign banks are successful or the local banks are successful. We don't know. So we'll have to say perhaps interview the compliance officers and get to know the situation to go ahead. So it's going to be interpretivism, inductive, uh, qualitative, or rather case study, monomethod qualitative, and cross-sectional. Yes. Come again.
These should be positive.
Positivism. Why?
And then
What is here? Can you see?
millennials.
No? Obviously, your population is very large, right? And uh, say you actually have a lot of theories as well. So you're testing the theory across, say, within this context. So it will be positivism, deductive, survey, monomethod quantitative, cross section. what the student said was, if you look at now, if you have, say, watched the TV in the past, right? Uh, you know that there was a recent incident in Jawaharlal University. What happened?
There's some people say accident, some people say intentionally put some tire.
Yeah, yeah. So, and it was a critical injury to the student.
Yeah.
So, now what happened to the operational efficiency of the institute? If the institute has to shut down and become out of bounds to the students, it obviously affects operational efficiency.
Yeah.
Okay, right? So, likewise, we find that in the private sector also, very many examples. You know, what happened to Saita? Right? Yeah, so then again, there were a couple of examples where, say, the foreign university withdrew the license. Then, yeah. So why those things happen is because those institutes don't take actions to identify the risks. Understand? So they have to first of all identify the various risks and then say take actions to control. So whether they have a risk culture, whether they identify the risk and analyze the risks, and likewise those things should be there. Then if those things are there, you have a better efficiency in terms of operations. Otherwise not. So here, although it relates to universities, not everyone in the university can talk about what kind of risk identification or risk analysis is there. Correct?
Yeah.
So therefore it is
Inductive.
yeah, it is inductive. Right. So however, this research, this student did in a slightly different way. She did it as a, of course, interviews to identify the connection between the two, and an element of quantitative analysis was also brought in, where she actually uh, uh, came up with the assessment of probabilities towards risks, and then you know the their perception about the risks and all that, with about 10 universities, 10 individuals kind of was brought. The reason to have it mainly qualitative is, if you look at, you have to analyze it with respect to 10 universities. So the data has to be aggregated to 10. So because of that, the quantitative approach was difficult to, have hypotheses. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So actually speaking, this was done among insurance agents because there is very high employee turnover, and they don't complete the full cycle within the company from the time they join, and then improve in terms of career and reach a higher position and stay within the company. Kind of situation is not observed. So the respondents were large, right? Insurance agents. So therefore, it was a quantitative study. So came from positivism to deductive to survey to monoquanti and cross section. MNP here is Migneria National Park.
This is yeah. Inductive.
Inductive. Because the sources from which you collect data or the respondents here again differs a lot. You have visitors, of course, where with respect to their satisfaction about the say animals that they could see and the sanitary facilities and the facilities of vehicles to travel within the park. Likewise, you can collect quantitatively, but the other things the visitors won't know. So the respondents were diverse here, like say environmentalists, the park warden, the safari drivers, the Pettikade people who are around the area, various. So it was more of interview-based one. Obviously, it is employee retention. It is a large employee base, so therefore quantitative. However, this also had an element of qualitative research coming in to interpret various cultures, but of course it's a more of a quantitative research. Qualitative. Like it was actually a mixed. We interviewed the CEOs, some of them, and it was about the subordinates also was there.
Yeah.
So under one CEO, you can have multiple subordinates. So the subordinates commented about the CEO's leadership style. So it was a mixed study. Yeah.
Qualitative.
Qualitative, yeah, because actually we took a group of startups who were provided this incubation or the financial assistance and then tried to find how they say performed, right? Given that the financial assistance is there, how well did they do? Just because the financial assistance was extended to them, does it mean that they all perform well? That was a kind of viewpoint held here. So it was, yes, you said qualitative.
This is also qualitative.
Qualitative. Right. You said qualitative, but actually speaking, there is a strong quantitative element here. Because we distributed the questionnaires to the tourists and asked them, okay, we have chosen hotels which specialize more on the Sri Lankan cuisine, like say the Mount Lavinia Hotel.
Yeah.
So then distributed the questionnaires to the tourists and then asked them about the, say, for example, the exclusivity of the menu and so on and so forth, and the culinary tourism destination, say, to what extent those things actually brought you here, kind of. So it was a mix because we interviewed the hotel managers and quantitatively analyze the findings through interviews, through questionnaire.
Quantitative.
Quantitative. It was a very clear quantitative research.
This
It's mixed.
mixed.
Yeah, very correct, because we can question, give a questionnaire to the tourists and interview the hotel managers.
This is quantitative.
Quantitative. If you want, you can mix.
Yeah.
Why do I say quantitative is more important? Is because you find that, hundreds of people going to coffee shops. Okay, for various needs, to have meetings, to socialize, to relax, to study, various reasons. So you find a lot of people going. So therefore, of course, you have a lot of say respondent base of population. A large sample was required, and they were asked to comment about this sensory branding and whether those things actually made them choose the coffee shops for their various needs among other alternatives. So it was more quantitative, but can mix with the interviews with the restaurant managers. Okay, so just a couple of more.
This is qualitative.
Actually speaking, this looked at the situation like this, okay?
Mm.
You know that in the recent past, there were several incidents, say starting from the Golden Key incident and then to Sakriti.
Yeah.
And thereafter again, there was an incident somewhere in Kalutara, if you remember, right? The people actually to some extent lost their confidence with these non-banking financial institutions.
Yeah.
Okay, so therefore people thought of sort of moving away from them, although they found they actually were offering attractive interest rates, for example.
Yeah.
So this was given to people who were there in those non-banking financial institutions to see what extent they are, having their mindset to move out, kind of. Clear? So it was a quantitative research because it was the intention of people to move out, no? Shifting, right? Quantitative. You can also mix here because we distributed questionnaires to the graduates who just passed out from the universities and interviewed the recruitment managers of the companies. So it was a mix. Okay.
Okay. Qualitative.
Qualitative or quantitative? It was like this, right? So in this bank, so you find that in the leasing department of each branch was chosen here, and we took the NPA ratio of each and every branch. So if you take 100 branches, you have 100 NPAs for each and every branch, right? So then we asked the, let's say if you take 100 branches, from one branch if you ask 2 officers to fill it, we aggregate the data and then consider that as the say the independent variable related to that particular branch which we connect with the NPA, right? So it was a quantitative research. Okay. But if you say qualitative, I would not say it's wrong, because you can also take a bunch of branches and go ahead interviewing them in detail, how they have successfully managed the NPA. That approach is also, yes, valid. The last one. I thought you would have gotten sick by now. Actually speaking, the subject area here is operations management.
Yeah.
We looked at, so when they bring in a new technique, whether that helps them to improve the efficiency. Right, so this was a situation where the new technique was brought in, right? The transformation of sitting work assembly to walking work assembly. So the new technique was the walking work assembly. So then, so I think there is another term, dancing flow or something. Correct?
Yeah.
So then we looked at, okay, to what extent it actually supported in terms of improving the efficiency. So I hope now, so this was again a quantitative research, because
Can measure.
yeah, we can measure. Very good. So now I hope you would have got a very clear idea as to how to interpret your research down the various lines of the onion. Okay, various layers of the onion, right? Can I give you a maybe 10 minutes break and come back to talk about the next method, that is the research design framework of Sekaran. Okay, so have a cup of tea and come.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.